Delicious, lush, nutritious. We come in all shapes and sizes, colours and shades. Raw or cooked, sweet or bitter, soft, crunchy, fragrant, pungent. All of us unique and special, full of fibre, vitamins and minerals, history, culture and traditions. We don't just fill your plate, we fill your stories and memories. Long and short, slim and plump, sometimes awkward or misshapen, forgotten or neglected, but never ever ugly, whatever people say. Because we're what really makes you tick, what makes your eyes sparkle and your smile dazzle. We are fruits and vegetables, simply beautiful.
Hello everyone and welcome to Channel World Seed. For this webisode, we are celebrating two important occasions, World Health Day and the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. Around the world, there is a huge diversity of gastronomic and culinary traditions. Yet one thing that all cultures have in common is that fruits and vegetables are dietary necessities. The World Health Organization recommends that we eat a minimum of 400 grams or 5 portions of fruits and vegetables daily. Not only do fruits and vegetables have high nutritional value, but for many growers and food producers, also significant economic and social value. Accessibility and availability of fruits and vegetables are crucial in achieving food security and fighting malnutrition. Today we are joined by an exceptional lineup of speakers who will help us discover how plant breeding can make our food more nutritious and answer the questions: what innovations can help make fruits and vegetables more nutritious and accessible to consumers? We have Vicente Navarro, who chairs the ISF Vegetable and Ornamental section and is also the Senior Vice President of BASF Global Vegetable Seeds. We have my colleague Szabolcs Ruthner, ISF Regulatory Affairs Manager, Mr. Frédéric Rosseneu, Corporate Business Development Manager at Greenyard, which is a global player in fresh, frozen, and prepared fruit and vegetables. And finally, we have plant breeders from two vegetable seed companies, Lisette van Noord of Rijk Zwaan and Karina van Leeuwen of East West Seed. Vicente, I would like to start with you. The last 12 months have been clearly a challenge for most of us. In your view, how has the pandemic influenced people's awareness of the value of a healthy diet, and more specifically, their view of fresh fruits and vegetables?
Thank you for the question. I truly believe that this COVID-19 pandemic has changed the world as we know it. We are all living differently, we buy differently, and in many other aspects, we are starting thinking also differently. And the consumers, all of us around the globe, we look at the products, and especially to food, through new lens. This virus is reshaping also the food industry in real time, and is accelerating long-term underlying trends in the space of weeks. Those habits that they are now being generated, they will endure beyond the crisis, and changing permanently what we value, how we shop, and how we live and work. I think there are three main factors that this crisis has changed the way we behave. The first one is our perception to food. More than ever, we can connect the healthy aspect of the food to us, and considering that having a healthy food is part of our health. We are what we eat. It's never so crucial and so actual like today. The second aspect is sustainability. Consumers are much more mindful of what we buy. We buy safe food, we strive to limit the waste, and we shop much more consciously about not only the cost, but also for the sustainable solutions. Initiatives like buying local are rising. And last but not least, the boom of the digital commerce, migrating the online for grocery shopping. And this for sure will continue. once this crisis will finish. I have to mention anyhow, there is a caveat with this. Already in the previous crisis, the financial crisis of 2008, we saw that prior to the crisis, the consumption of organic food was increasing, and due to the financial crisis, especially the low-income households shift away from organic and back to the old habits. We don't know what is going to happen now because this crisis is not only a sanitary crisis, but it's also a financial crisis. But as a summary, I would like to mention that the consumers everywhere, they want to change for better, recognizing the value of food and the impact on the health. And this is the most important consequence, what is related to the fruit of this situation.
Sabi, what is the seed sector's take on the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables? How do we link our priorities to this celebration?
So this is absolutely in line with the key priorities of ISF. The other important factor that is closely linked to the innovation in plant breeding is the free movement of seed and germplasm for research. So plant breeding is a global undertaking. There are many research corporations, private and public, all over the world. So these research corporations are essential to provide for farmers and growers quality seeds and the varieties that are adapted to the local conditions. The other factor is that today there is no country that could fully supply their farmers and growers with the seed of their own seed of their choice solely from their own production. So seed companies produce seeds and trial seeds in different countries all over the world as the way to mitigate the risk of crop failure due to adverse weather conditions. So by finding optimal locations for seed production, timing of harvest, and localized expertise, the seed sector ensured a steady supply of seed for farmers and everywhere. And in the end, they can deliver fresh and nutritious product for the consumer. So I think, and we believe that we also need to, and it's important to reflect to these elements when we are speaking about innovation and fruits and vegetables in general.
Frédéric, consumers today are showing strong interest in fresh fruits and vegetables. Some are even growing it in their own backyards. What trends do you see in terms of consumer preference for fresh produce, and what are the things that matter the most to consumers?
Well, I think if we see one thing with the COVID-19 crisis, that's there's really a renewed and even bigger interest from consumer in health, the importance of health and how fresh fruit and vegetables, but fruit and vegetables across the board contribute in disease prevention. I think we still have to bear in mind that we in fruit and vegetable face an underconsumption, which in Belgium alone is responsible for the loss of 50,000 disease-adjusted life years, or it's public cost of 2 billion euro a year in a tiny country. So there's a lot to be gained still there. Overall, and I think the COVID-19 crisis just puts a turbo boost behind the trends that we already were witnessing in terms of switching to more plant-based foods, for which fruit and vegetable can obviously take some benefit. What we also saw, particularly in the crisis now, is cooking from scratch and enjoying mealtime, preparing meals at home gained significant importance. And I think we as a company, we saw a lot of opportunities. There's already some years ago with the development of meal kits, fresh produce meal kits, in which we really put forward all the ingredients to be ready to be made at home just like that. So consumer didn't have to bother about assembling the right menu of thinking what to cook. So that's really interesting to see, and we see it also in the broader perspective. You just look at the success of companies like HelloFresh with the meal boxes and so on. So there's definitely an ongoing trend, which will, I think, continue to succeed. Elsewhere, if we look, I think that COVID also made clear is the vulnerability of long supply chains. Even if it was not that acute in food, I mean, certainly in the fruit and vegetable sector, the resilience was very big, and we didn't, despite all difficulties, we didn't watch serious shortages. But there's definitely an interest from consumers in increased local sourcing. Now, you mentioned growing your own has definitely seen more interest, and I think it's positive in a sense that it creates respect for all the efforts which are needed to grow a plant successfully. One would think it's very simple until you try it in your own garden. So that's on one side of the spectrum, but on the very other side of the spectrum, you see the amount of money pouring into vertical farming, which is really the high-tech end of growing fruit and vegetables, and allowing really to go to tailor-made fruit and vegetables almost, because with the light you can really adjust almost to a personal level what kind of fruits and vegetable you like. So there's a bit for everyone there. Of course, without losing sight of authenticity, taste, and the nutritional value of our crops, which is increasing year after year, as well from the consumer side. And I think that we certainly have to bear in mind as we go through all the innovation, that those are still at the core of what consumers want, and will be even valued higher in the future.
Vicente is chair of the vegetable and ornamental section at ISF. Explain to us what these trends mean for vegetable seed companies, and how are companies responding to consumer demands?
I think this crisis has reminded the critical nature of our industry. Despite the quarantines and the social distancing, access to food is essential, and our customers, the growers, they need our help to feed the world. We, as a seed companies, we are at the beginning of the food chain, and our role is essential. It's essential to supply it is more critical than has been never before. And we are all proud to be part of that, and because that makes really that define very clearly what is the purpose of our work. As always, I believe that science is part of the solution, and we need to integrate those new way of thinking of the consumers in our innovation process, and to deliver appropriate solutions. As I mentioned before, the request for health, for sustainability, and increase on digitalization are again the three main areas that we will explore on my answer, how the seed companies can really contribute to the challenge. But before doing that, I would like to make a comparison with the situation with the technology, because very often science, when it's coming from genetics, is not very well accepted. But during all this period that we have been on isolation, the boom and the acceptance of technology has been amazing. That means using this media to communicate the way we work now has nothing to do with the way we worked 1 year ago. We need to do the same. We need to prove the value of the seeds, of the food, to deliver health and sustainability. And because we are going to face a higher demand of plant-based and healthy diet, that's for sure. Having for any seed company a health strategy will become a strategic differentiator in the future. In our company, our aspiration is to make healthy eating enjoyable and sustainable for people, partners, and planet. And this has never been so actual, and we consider that should be the motto of all the companies, all the industry. It's not only communicating that per se veggies are healthy, but also start breeding and start using the science to introduce health compounds as a target in our breeding programs. The second aspect that I think we can play a very important role is on the sustainability. That's very clear that the solution for this crisis should be based on sustainable solutions. And I think we have a very big word to say here, because that includes also the acceptance of genetic technologies that will help us to maximize yield and secure the production, while we also reduce the food waste and increase the compound and the nutritive aspect of the food. And finally, digital technology. Digital technology is everywhere, is amazing, improving and fostering crop production. When all our supply chains has been tested, production diversification become key. And these open opportunities for local production, and that means the boom of protected crops. We are fully convinced that will increase because people want to eat local. Automation will support that. We will capture data through sensors. We will automate cropping, including harvesting, and both protected and open field crops. That will also reduce the risk of sanitary outbreaks. You see that everywhere. Digitalization will come to us and will help us to produce more and more safe. Obviously, these two aspects, digitalization and sustainability, in some areas are going beyond the classic expertise of the seed companies. So we all need to establish partnerships to improve time to value, to short the time to the market, accumulate the knowledge, and create new portfolios. I'm not aware of any vegetable seed company that is thinking on decreasing the R&D expenditure. On the contrary, we all consider the current situation as a big challenge for all of us. And we are ready to answer that. And we will need to increase collaborations with external partners, as I mentioned before, to develop the best consumer-oriented solutions on veggies.
Today's plant breeders are developing colorful, tasty, and attractive vegetables that come in all shapes and sizes. We will hear how they continue to find creative ways to inspire people to eat more vegetables and increase the nutritional value of their diet. As a plant breeder, what do you think are ways in which plant breeding can make vegetables more nutritious and also more appealing to consumers? Let's start with you, Lisette.
Well, I think a very important thing to make the fruits and vegetables attractive is to think about what the market wants, what the market needs. For example, like I said, I'm working for the Mexican market, and I also have a very thin-walled, little bit spicy pepper there. And the fruit has to be thin-walled, the pepper has to be thin-walled because they use it in specific dishes. And to make it appealing for the customer, it should also match the expectation. Like they want a fruit that is thin-walled, so that's what we should breed for, because that's what they will use. Also, something specific is that this pepper shouldn't be too spicy, because that's not what they're used to. So to encourage people to eat more fruits and vegetables, I think it's very important to meet their expectations, or even excel their expectations to make it even more tastier and easier to prepare.
Karina, could you tell us what you're focusing on?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the word appealing, and what you see in Asia is that, especially during the rainy season, the vegetables, they don't really look appealing in the market. So several of our crops are really focusing on breeding for the off season. So how can we make a better adaptation in those varieties so that they thrive better in the rainy season? And then we focus a lot on resistance breeding. So bacterial wilt is a big problem, and we have several viruses in the rainy season. And if we can build in a resistance for those viruses, the fruits in the market, they look much more appealing. So that's that's how we approach it for a big part.
Thanks, Karina. Lisette, can you give us some examples of breeding programs you're working on which aim to improve the nutritional value and attractiveness of vegetables?
So yeah, if I look for example at the serranos, I'm working also on the serrano pepper. It's kind of comparable to the jalapeno, but a little bit thinner. A very important trait there is also the color. You want to have a nice shiny color. So that's really what we're working on, because it has to, like Karina also said, it has to be appealing. Another point there as well is that, like Karina already said, it has to look attractive also on the market. So when the fruits are being sold or the vegetables are being sold, so shelf life is also a very important point, to make sure that the fruits and vegetables look good and eatable for as long as possible.
Thanks, Lisette. Karina, you mentioned working on off-season production and resistances. Can you give us some examples of breeding programs that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so in tomato, we are really, what we saw is that in cool season, the fruits and vegetables are easy to produce and the prices for the farmers are also low. But then after the cool season, it stops. So we really, already like 15 years ago, the Philippines started really to focus on the off-season tomatoes. So the farmers would get a much higher price. They would earn more because vegetables are good for the whole chain. They're good for the farmer, they're good for the seller, and they're good for the buyer who eats them. So we want to make those many vegetables. We want them to be a year-round available. And bacterial wilt is resistance is a high priority for us as a tropical seed company.
Thank you. Now, Frédéric, we've heard about the breeding priorities of some of our plant breeders and vegetable seed companies. Now, allow us to get a glimpse of what the value chain requires. What kind of innovations are supermarkets and food processors looking for?
Well, in terms of innovations we're looking for, and also I think supermarkets are looking at, one cannot escape the topic now, and it was mentioned briefly in one of the interventions, of the reduction of food waste and packaging waste, and that is closely linked to the, let's say, improving the quality and ensuring the shelf life of fruit and vegetables to be really perfect. And I think this is this has only really just started now. I mean, I think it's almost every week that we hear retailers and other market players announcing activities to reduce their packaging footprint, looking into the possibilities of coatings to improve shelf life. But I think at the same time we also need to look where breeding can play a role. There have been some innovations on that front already, but I think we need to make sure that the innovations are visible across all the different types of fruit and vegetables. We are fortunate to be active in a sector with a lot of diversity, with a lot of different crop types and varieties. There, I think we need to make sure that those efforts, let's say, trickle down into all the different crop types that we witness. But it will be a story where different modes of action and technology can cooperate to obtain, at the end of the day, less food waste and less packaging where possible. I think that's one element. If we look convenience, even if I mentioned cooking from scratch, has been very important and will remain important. I think anyone who prepares dinner wants also to make sure that it can be as convenient as possible. And whether that is down to the specific of introducing even more seedless varieties, or making sure that fresh cut produce can just stay a little longer than today. There's still a lot of opportunities out there. From a broader perspective, and there we touch upon the wider sustainability issues, where we're witnessing the effects of climate change. I think drought and heat resistance will certainly be elements which we will be looking after more closely, thinking particularly in our processing segment, where we've seen already a couple of seasons the challenges posed by climate change being too hot at certain moments, or prolonged periods of droughts. So that will be definitely an element which will require more attention, just to ensure the availability, also not only for us but also down to the consumer level in the long run.
Thanks, Frédéric. Now, you've identified 3 points that consumers prioritize, or that retailers and food processors prioritize, which is reducing food waste and packaging, increasing convenience, and improving sustainability. So now my question is for the plant breeders. Are there solutions that plant breeders and product development can offer to this end? And could you share with us some exciting prospects for the future?
Well, yes. An important thing also is like you already said, that you don't want to waste food, that you want to use as much as possible. And I think in that sense, it's very important for us as breeders to think about, okay, what can we do to help that, to reduce less food? So if you think about how the final product will be processed, how can we help there? If I think about the jalapeno, you can sell them, you can buy them everywhere in jars, and they're sliced. And what you want there is to have nice round slices. So for us as breeder, it's important to develop a jalapeno where you can get as many slices from as possible without wasting a lot of the fruit. So I think that's a very important point for breeders to focus on. Like, okay, what are we developing for? What will happen with the final product, and how can we make that as efficient as possible? We also touched the subject already about that it should be fresh long in the supermarket. So you can also think about, okay, how will it be stored in the supermarket, or what is the process between going from the field or the greenhouse, or even vertical farming, finally when it's in the with the consumer, what are the steps in between? What does the fruit or the vegetable has to endure, and how can I make the fruit or vegetable resilient enough to endure all that before it's at the consumer? I think there is an important point that where breeders can add something.
Yeah, I also I heard the word shelf life, and food waste is of course very important. And especially in Asia, you see that a lot of fruits and vegetables are wasted before they reach the consumer. So we are always looking, how can we improve the transportability? Should we make the fruits more firm, or how can we improve the shelf life? And we have some good examples in that from papaya, but also from tomato. And what we see is that some tomatoes, and this comes also back into the taste, some tomatoes in Asia are still harvested very, very green, like in Myanmar and years ago in the southern parts of the Philippines. Now, if we can make that tomato more firm, so it keeps well longer during transportation, it will make it possible for the farmer to harvest a few days later. And that will really enrich the taste a lot. So those are also things we are looking into.
Vicente, we've seen in many instances how plant breeding innovation can be one of the solutions to achieving better quality and availability of fruits and vegetables. What does it take to make sure that the cycle of innovation continues? And what do you see as challenges along the way?
Thank you. As I said before, innovation in plant breeder is one of the many solutions to the global challenge that we have as a society of building sustainable food systems in face of the climatic change and meeting the increasing demand for quality and healthy food. Gene editing and the latest technologies enables plant breeder to make precise changes to the plant genetic material to improve productivity, nutritional value, and for the benefit of the environmental farmers and consumers. So very often, those changes that can be done there, they can only mirror what can occur in nature or through traditional breeding. The only difference is that the speed to market is much higher. You asked about what are the challenges that we have. We have the technology. We know that we can use the technology in a very appropriate way. We can provide solutions to the big challenges that we have now as a society. The main problem that we are facing now is that the regulatory aspect of the regulators around the globe, they are having different approaches towards gene editing products. And this finally ended in a patchwork of regulation. If you visualize the map of the world and you see basically that regulators in America, with few exceptions, are accepting these technologies and opening the opportunity for seed companies to start working on that. But you see two main areas. One is Europe, where the European Court of Justice already ruled that gene editing is considered a GMO, and the other part is New Zealand. So this is creating a lot of problems, because when this technology is regulated differently, different countries, that means that it's difficult for us to establish an appropriate to develop varieties and to secure that we are compliant everywhere. In short, it's limiting the capacity of the industry to innovate. It's reducing the diversity of genetic resources. It's affecting negatively collaborations among companies, but also with institutes. And is affecting the movement of seeds globally. But on top of that, commodities trade disruption will occur, because not every country is regulating the same product in the same way. And that will have consequences for the development of agriculture and food security. And on top of that, there will be other risks as well. For instance, if regulators consider new breeding technologies as GMOs, only larger seed companies will have the financial capability to manage the costs related to regulation. Only a limited number of crops will benefit from these breeding innovations, because otherwise that will not be financially interesting. And the accessibility of these tools to the academic community and to research institutes will be much more restricted. Therefore, less collaboration and less development. So we see many positive examples, as I mentioned before, in Americas, Japan, US, where regulators took a risk-based approach. However, in Europe, all these new methods are regulated as GMO, and that will make practically impossible to introduce gene editing products in the market. This situation is changing now. The European Commission is reconsidering to update the legislation in view of the biodiversity and farm-to-fork strategy. And they are carrying on a study that will be presented very soon. And we consider that even this spring, next spring, to the Council. It can be expected that the study will confirm the significant economic potential of the technologies and the products that they can be produced with those technologies. And we hope, as an industry, that we can move towards a much more logic regulation that is more encompassed, much more uniform around the globe, because today we are global. And then, as a company, we have to be compliant. We cannot risk not to be compliant, obviously. And the only way to do that is that we move into a much more uniform regulatory acceptance of new breeding technologies around the globe. Because at the end, we are fully convinced that this is the really tool that we can use in order to provide a solution to all the challenges that we have in the world. We cannot afford ourselves not to use this technology. Of course, within being all the accomplishing all the requests for regulators, but not doing that, I think that will be something that will not be understandable.
Sabi, would you like to add something to that?
I think Vicente very well summarized the regulatory challenges and the hurdles we are facing, and we know there was a lot of public consultation recently taking place in different countries of the world. So one of the solution and one of the tool we can overcome these regulatory hurdles is communication and information sharing. The seed sector recognized that promoting the acceptance of plant breeding innovation requires a broad stakeholders' efforts to engage diverse audience, including agriculture value chain and consumers. So we as ISF and our members will continue to initiate and support a constructive dialogue around the evolving story of plant breeding and how it contributes to a safe, nutritious, sustainable, affordable, and diverse food and feed supply. What is really important here is to put this new type of innovation in the context of the natural evolution of plant breeding. Plant breeding innovation is a continuum based on accumulated knowledge and experience over hundreds of years. So these new methods are additional tools in the breeder's toolbox that is used to address global changes and challenges as climate change. So all these new tools, so new and old tools basically, are used in combination by transbreeders, and further build on each other to achieve relevant breeding results in less time with greater precision. So they won't make this new innovation won't make older methods obsolete. Rather than these new methods will be integrated into the entire breeding cycles that, of course, including crossing and selection, for instance. What is also important to note that whether new varieties produced through traditional breeding or these newer innovative breeding methods, all new varieties will go through rigorous testing for quality before seeds are sold to farmers or growers. So I think we need to really understand this whole process in the comprehensive manner, and not just to pinpoint some of the techniques or methods we have, but really investigate and understand in this holistic approach how breeders are approaching plant breeding to improve new varieties and put them on the market.
So what do you think about the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables?
Well, I think it's very important to motivate people to eat more fruits and vegetables because of all the health benefits that, and any way that we can encourage people to do that, I think it's good. And I'm also happy that I can help promote that in this way.
Yeah, I think it's really great. Vegetables are close to my heart. It's my work, it's my lunch, my dinner. And I think we have so many great vegetables which are already so nutritious, like the bitter gourd or the bitter melon, pumpkin and kangkong. And I really like to see people start eating more vegetables. So I think this is a great way of encouraging them.
Yeah, I think it's great to see this recognition for fruit and vegetables coming from the United Nations. It provides a nice opportunity to not only highlight the health benefits of fruit and vegetables, but also underline their sustainability benefits, which are there. After all, we're both the most healthy and the most sustainable food category out there. So it's nice to have this kind of attention.
And that's it for this episode of Channel World Seed. Thanks to all our speakers, and thank you for joining us on this webisode. Stay safe and healthy, and eat your vegetables.